Hello and welcome. In this lecture I'm going to provide a demonstration of a solution for our previous challenge. I'm going to go through how we can reverse the characters in a string using the stir length function, and also go through sorting strings using stir compare and also stir copy, as well as using the bubble sort algorithm. So let's bring up code blocks, and I'm going to just create a single program I think for this. I mentioned in the challenge that you create two programs, but for simplicity and demonstration wise, I'm just going to create a single one. Create a project. I'm just going to name it string functions or some variation of that. Let's see. Let's call it common string functions. Example. So let's start with the reverse. The reverse can go in its own function, or we can just put it in the main. I'm just going to put it in the main. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to create a, first thing I want to do actually is I want to include the correct header file so that I can use these string functions, which is my include string.h. This is where it contains all the nice string functions. Now I'm going to create a character array. I'm going to make it a size 100. It's just arbitrary. Won't be able to store things greater than 100. I'm going to create a couple local variables that will help me with my parsing. And what I want to do is I want to display some output first to the user. So I'm just going to say a couple line feeds. Print individual characters of string in reverse order. That will tell the user what's going on. And then also print out, just to make it more apparent, just print out something like that so it's easier to read. I'm going to say input the string. I'm going to read in the string. And then I'm going to store the string. So I'm going to say scanf %s, and I'm going to say stir. And I don't have to pass the ampersand to read it in. Then I'm going to get the string length, and I'm going to put that in my L local variable. So I can call stir length by just saying stir length, passing in the string, and it returns how many characters in that string. Very, very easy. And then I'm going to print out something to tell them that the characters in reverse order. So the characters of the string in reverse are \n. And then I'm going to write a nice little for loop that goes through my array and according to the length and just reverses them. So I'm going to say for I equals L, remember I, so I'm going to be going backwards in the actual string array. I'm going to start off at the end and go forward. I'm going to say I is greater than or equal to 0 and I minus minus. And you notice I don't have to look at any null termination characters when I do it this way. Then I'm just going to print out each character as I encounter it. To print out a character in C, you just do the %C. And just do that and say stir sub I. And that is basically it. And then I'll just print out a new line. And actually I'll print out a bunch of things just to end it. And a bunch of dashes. Let's see if that works. Very easy, this one actually. As it should be. To get the length should not be difficult. And I forgot a line feed, so let's fix that. Okay, so here it says print individual characters of string in reverse order, enter the string. Now scanf, it's only going to read in, so if I enter Jason space Fedden, scanf is only going to read up to Jason in the space. you'd want to use another function like fgetS if you wanted to read the entire thing. So what this is going to do, it's just going to reverse JSON, print out NOSAJ, which it does. The characters of the string in reverse are NOSAJ. That's pretty simple. Not a very complicated function or implementation. Now let's try it with sorting a string. And so now I'm going to do something, and I'm going to do it in the main, I guess, just for now. Probably should be putting these in actual functions, but we're not demonstrating functions in this lecture. We're demonstrating strings. So let's create a couple more local variables that we're going to need. Mainly, we're going to create a name. And in this case, we're going to create, I don't know if I should do it this way. I was going to create an array of strings. Yeah, we'll create an array of strings and we'll use fgetS. I'm going to create an array of strings. So this looks like a two-dimensional array. So what we're doing here is we're creating 25 strings of size 50. And then I'm also going to create another one of just 25. This will contain each string. And then I'm going to add two more variables. I'm going to add an N and a J. And so after we do our reverse, I'm going to print out another message to say what we're doing. Sorts the strings of an array using bubble sort. I'm not going to explain bubble sort to you because again that's just an algorithm that is not relevant to what we're doing really. It's just a way to sort. It's one of the easiest sorts actually because you just swap essentially. But what we want to do is we first want to get how many strings they're going to enter. So we're going to say printf input number of strings. And then we're going to say scanf. Scanf can be used here because it's just a number. We're going to say %d and we're going to store that in our local variable n. Again, I know I'm not using great names here, but I'm demonstrating something. Since it's an int, we have to pass in the ampersand. Then I'm going to ask them to enter the strings. So here I'm going to say input string 1, 2, or 3 followed by line feet. This will just be what number they have to enter. String 1, string 2, or string 3. Then I'll actually have a loop that goes through and gets the input. So here I'll say for I equals 0, I is less than equal to n for how many strings they want to enter in I++ or ++I. Here I'm going to actually read the string, and I'm going to use a different way to read strings because I want to ignore, well actually I shouldn't need to, yeah, it's okay, I'll just use scanf again. I was thinking of using fgetS so that you could enter in a string that had spaces, but I don't think we need to do it. We do scanf, and we're going to read into scanf into our names array. Remember we have name, and this is a string of strings essentially of each 50 characters, or 25 characters. 25 rows, 50 columns. So 50 characters, 25 words. No, the opposite. Sorry. The 50 characters, 25 words. So the max number of words you could enter is 25. So we're going to store this in our name array. So we're just going to say scanf. We're going to read in a string, and we're going to put it in name sub I. Okay. And so we stored our arrays. We can only store up to 25. Now we're done with our loop, and now we can just write our bubble sort. And so our bubble sort, I'm not going to explain to you. I'm just going to tell you that it's a pretty simple algorithm that has an inner loop. So you have a for loop that goes through I is equal to 1 through all the strings. And then in your inner loop, you go from 0 to all the strings minus 1. And you compare that first string to all the other strings. And you essentially bubble them down. But what's important here is is the stir compare function. Let me just try to get this indentation correctly. And the stir copy functions. This is really what's important. You'll notice I don't have any ending brackets for either for, because they have single statements. Even though this if has something in its if body, this is only one statement. So we're comparing each word to every other word, essentially, after we've compared one previously. So then we say if stir compare name sub j is and name sub j sub 1. So stir compare takes two arguments, two character arrays, character pointers really. And if they're equal, it's going to return 0. If the first parameter is less than the second parameter, it's going to return less than 0. And if the first parameter is greater than the second parameter, it's going to return greater than 0, 1. So what this is saying is if the first string is greater than the second string, then we want to swap everything. And that's why we have that temp. Temp is actually storing a temporary string. So we put in the temp name sub j, and then we swap name sub j with name sub j plus 1. That's how the bubble sort works. Again, what's important here is stir compare and stir copy. All right, and if you're being safe, you'd want to use stir and compare. And when you do stir and compare, well, actually, stir and compare you don't care about, because that's only if you want to compare a prefix. For stir copy, you actually want to use stir and copy. And that third parameter is what's important. So stir and copy, you only want to make sure you don't copy in more than the size of temp, -1. Because otherwise you have a buffer overflow. So you would add all of these. You could also use, if it wasn't a character buffer, you'd probably want to use stir length if it was a pointer. But size of will work fine for this. And again, this will eliminate any buffer overruns. So it's always safer to use stir and copy. Right, and -1 because we have our null terminator that needs to go at the end. So here, it's just source destination for stir and copy. We're copying name sub j into temp. And the same with name sub j plus 1 and name sub j. And then lastly, temp into name sub j plus 1. And I'm actually have to update these variables because they're wrong, because they always have to be the source. So name here would be name sub j. And then the last one would be name sub j plus 1. J plus 1. So that's stir and copy and stir compare. Very easy to use functions. After we've sorted them, we just want to print them out. So we want to say the strings appears. The strings appear after sorting. Put it in line feed. And then go through a loop to print out all the strings in our array. So we say for I equals 0. I is less than or equal to n, because the n represents how many strings we sorted and entered in. Then we just want to go through our string of string arrays. So we want to say printf %s line feed and name sub I. So name sub I is actually our sorted array. That's why, so we had name sub I, even though we don't have the second one, because that represents the size of each character. 25 characters max of 25 words of 50 max. So let's see if this works. Build it. Got a couple messages because I don't know how to spell. And if we run this, we're first going to run our reverse function so you can see that again, because we included it in the same program. So let's just say JSON, or well, let's do something different since that's what we did before. Let's say fedin NIDEF, that's good. Input the number of strings we want to sort, let's say 5. Let's say ZZZZ, just so it's clear, F. Something like that. And actually, what I do? 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. It did 6. So I messed up a little there. But it looks like it sorted it. A, B, D, F, R, Z. So it works. I do have one bug though, because input string %d, I input the number of strings in n, and then I say less than equal. I should just say less than. So let's run it again just to demonstrate it. But I have to build it. Don't forget to build after you've changed things. Again, we'll just say anything here. And then number of strings, let's just do 4. And, well, let's do something. So then they alphabetize them and say D, E, L, Z. So it looks good. So you can definitely improve on this code where you could want to put everything in functions, make it more modular. But what I'm trying to get through with this assignment is how you use stir compare, how you use stir and copy, and how you can use stir length. You should also play around with the stir cat, stern cat, and that's the other real common function. You may want to play around with stir stir and stir char for searching. Those are really, really good. Or the is, upper is, lower for checking characters. Or the A2I and A2F conversion functions. Thank you. I hope this was helpful.